The East India Company was one of the most powerful and influential corporations in world history, shaping the trajectory of global trade, politics, and colonial rule. Established by the British in 1600, this company grew from a modest trading enterprise into a dominant force controlling many regions, particularly in the Indian subcontinent. Through trade, military force, and strategic alliances, the East India Company altered Asia's economic and political landscape and beyond. Keep watching to discover the origins, expansion, key figures, and lasting consequences of the East India Company. Origins of the East India Company. Founded on December 31, 1600, under a royal charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I, the East India Company was initially formed to explore and exploit markets in the East. At the time, European powers such as Portugal, Spain, and the Netherlands had already established lucrative trade networks in Asia, dealing in spices, silk, and other precious commodities. The British sought to compete in this lucrative market, and the East India Company was their vehicle. The charter granted the company a monopoly on English trade in the region, giving it exclusive rights to trade and even wage war to protect its operations. This allowed it to establish trading posts, sign treaties, and even maintain its own military forces. Although it did not hold sovereignty in its area of operation, it was given the right to exercise sovereignty in the name of the English crown and government. This was a massive amount of power for a simple trading company. Initially, it was just a monopolistic trading company meant to exploit the trading opportunities in Southeast Asia and India. It was a limited joint stock company, where people invested capital and received part of the profits. It was managed by 215 merchants and investors and headed up by the Earl of Cumberland. Even before the company began to dominate politics in those regions, it was criticized for its monopolies, harsh trade terms, corruption, and damage to the English wool trade caused by cheaply importing Indian-made textiles. Expansion and growth. As the East India Company established itself and began expanding, it set up central trading posts in Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. The company operated as a commercial entity that traded textiles, spices, tea, and opium. However, as it expanded, it became increasingly involved in local politics and conflicts. The company's military arm grew, and by the mid-18th century, it was directly engaging in battles to protect and expand its interests. The Battle of Plassey in 1757 was a defining moment, as the company's forces, led by Robert Clive, defeated the Nawab of Bengal. This victory marked the beginning of the East India Company's transformation from a trading company into a governing power in India. Operations and important figures. The East India Company functioned as both a commercial and military entity, exerting influence through a mix of diplomacy, economic power, and military force. Some key figures in its history include Robert Clive, Warren Hastings, and Charles Cornwallis. Robert Clive was a military leader who helped secure British control in Bengal and laid the foundation for British rule in India. Originally arriving in Madras as a clerk for the British East India Company, he was drawn into military service during Anglo-French hostilities in the region. In 1751, Clive led a daring expedition to seize the fortress at Arcot, held by a French ally, Chandra Sahib. With just 200 Europeans and 300 Indian sepoys, Clive took the fort and successfully defended it during a 53-day siege by Chandra Sahib's son. This campaign established Clive as a bold strategist and rising figure in the East India Company's military efforts. He left Madras in 1753 with his wife and a small fortune before returning in 1755 as governor of Fort St. David. When he reached Madras, he immediately became involved in the affairs of Bengal, which is where he cemented his reputation. Until then, Bengal had been ruled by viceroys of the Mughal emperor, and the British East India Company carried on its trade under their protection. In 1756, however, a dispute caused the Mughal viceroy of Bengal to attack and capture the British fort there. In 1757, Clive launched a bold offensive to reclaim the vital Bengal city of Calcutta, now known as Kolkata. After seizing control, he pressured the viceroy into reinstating the East India Company's privileges, securing financial compensation, and granting permission to strengthen Calcutta's fortifications. Sensing an opportunity amid growing dissatisfaction with the viceroy's rule, Clive strategically backed a rival to shift the political landscape in favor of British trade interests. His chosen candidate was Mir Jafar, a seasoned but aging general who harbored deep animosity toward Bengal's ruling leader, Siraj al-Dawlah. Through calculated political maneuvering, Clive ensured a new regime would align with the company's ambitions. Clive broke ties with the leader of Bengal and then overthrew him at the Battle of Plassey. This victory all but made Clive the master of Bengal, and the East India Company confirmed him as governor. Bengal's first governor-general was Warren Hastings, who played a crucial role in the company's administrative expansion. He was appointed the governor of Bengal by the East India Company in 1772. Under his tenure, the company expanded its territory through ruthless conquest and treaties of alliance with Indian princely states. Hastings had a vision for India and how it should be ruled, including involving Indians in government and law. However, the reality of post-Mughal India was rife with chaos and rivalries between princely states and the East India Company traders and its military. Hastings' vision never came to fruition, and he would eventually be accused of corruption. Although he was acquitted, he became a divisive figure. Charles Cornwallis implemented significant governance and revenue collection reforms during his tenure as Governor-General. He was the same General Cornwallis at the Battle of Yorktown. After losing the American Revolutionary War, Cornwallis pursued colonial campaigns in India and Ireland. In 1786, he was knighted and appointed Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief in India. He played a massive role in the establishment of colonial rule in India. He overhauled and completely transformed the administration of the East India Company, securing the company's financial stability and the longevity of British rule in India. He also introduced something known as the Cornwallis Code, which changed India's judicial structure in a way that institutionalized racism in the legal system and embedded a systematic view that white European men were superior to others in India. These figures, among others, helped shape the company's policies and interactions with local rulers, often using strategic alliances and military might to secure control over vast territories. Impact on India and the world. The East India Company profoundly affected the regions in which it operated. Some of its significant impacts include economic exploitation, political control, cultural influence, the opium trade, and Indian rebellion and resistance. The company restricted India's economy to serve British commercial interests, leading to declining local industries and economic hardship. It established a monopoly and brought vast quantities of trade goods like tea, cotton textiles, and spices to Britain, generating immense wealth for the company and its investors while simultaneously exploiting India's economy through unfair trade practices. Eventually, they drained the wealth from the Indian subcontinent and contributed to the rise of British imperialism. By the 19th century, the East India Company effectively ruled much of India, controlling policies, laws, and governance. They used military power and administrative functions to control large areas of India, even overthrowing Mughal rule and establishing their own governors-general. Eventually, in the wake of the East India Company, the British Crown directly ruled India as the British Raj. British customs, language, and legal systems were introduced, many of which persist in India today. In addition to introducing their own culture, the British disrupted traditional Indian industries, which led to the decline of traditional Indian handicraft industries due to their stress on goods like cotton textiles. They also established a Western-style education system. The company also played a major role in the opium trade with China, leading to the Opium Wars and increasing British influence in the region. The wars started because the exchange of Chinese goods was highly lucrative for the British. However, the Chinese wouldn't accept British products in return. They only wanted to be compensated in silver, which depleted Britain's silver reserves. To rectify this perceived imbalance, the East India Company, among other British merchants, imported Indian opium into China illegally and received payment in silver, which was then used to buy tea and other goods. Opium has long been valued in China as a medicine that eases pain, assists sleep, and reduces stress. However, the illegal influx of opium led to millions of addicts across the country. By 1839, opium sales to China paid for the entire British tea trade. Finally, the East India Company's oppressive policies led to uprisings, including the Indian Rebellion of 1857, which ultimately resulted in the dissolution of the company and the establishment of direct British rule over India. Long-term consequences of the East India Company. The East India Company's legacy is multifaceted and has a lasting impact on history. While it contributed to the globalization of trade and the spread of Western administrative systems, many of which persist in modern governments, it also left a legacy marked by profound economic exploitation, cultural disruption, and political upheaval. The company's practices of monopoly, manipulation, and coercion not only shaped India's financial landscape, but also altered the course of history in the broader region. Even after the East India Company was dissolved in 1874, its influence did not vanish. The British Crown took over direct control of India, marking the beginning of the British Raj, which lasted until 1947. During this period, many of the company's exploitative policies, such as the imposition of unfair taxation and the continued extraction of resources for British benefit, remained in place. Indian industries were stifled, and traditional agricultural practices were transformed to serve imperial interests, often with devastating consequences for local populations. The British Raj was built upon the East India Company's model of governance, perpetuated the same economic inequities, entrenched social divisions, and patterns of administrative control. In a broader global context, the East India Company's activities were among the key catalysts for the modern system of international corporate power. It set a dangerous precedent for corporate entities' enormous influence over national and global politics. The company's ability to wage war, control trade routes, and directly influence the policies of nations was a precursor to the kings of corporate power seen in the 20th and 21st centuries, where multinational corporations wield significant influence over global markets, labor practices, and even governments. This provides a lasting lesson about the potential dangers of unchecked corporate power. This theme remains relevant today as global businesses continue to shape national economies and political systems. Moreover, the East India Company's legacy extends to the world's attitudes towards imperialism and colonialism. The British imperialism that followed the company was bolstered by its policies and practices that was marked by a focus on exploitation and cultural superiority. These ideas still linger in the historical memory of former colonies. In many ways, the company laid the groundwork for enduring stereotypes and racial hierarchies that were institutionalized during the colonial period and continue to affect global relations today. In conclusion, the East India Company's rise and fall is a stark reminder of the far-reaching consequences of corporate power unchecked by ethical governance. While it played a pivotal role in the global economy of the time, its exploitation of resources, people, and cultures left deep scars still felt today. From the political landscapes of modern India to the ongoing challenges of global trade and governance, the story of the East India Company serves as both a warning and a point of reflection for the complexities of imperialism, corporate influence, and colonial legacies in our modern world. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the East India Company and its impact on the world, check out our book, The East India Company, a captivating guide to the English company that was created for the exploitation of trade with East and Southeast Asia and India. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.